Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Coffman, who, if you're not aware, has tested positive for COVID this week. But I am just so thankful, Baruch Hashem, that he continues to share. He's feeling all right, and he's going to share with us a wonderful lesson today. Means a lot to me. But I've been up all night working night shift, and so I'm a little groggy, and I'm probably in worse state than he is. So, Baruch Hashem, let's jump back in. We're still in chapter 8, or chapter 2, Mishna 8, part 14 today. So, Rabbi, good to be with you, sir. You're live on the air, and we're going to turn it over to you. I'm glad you're healthy and doing fine.
It's always a pleasure to be here, and you're 100% right. Most of the time, you're more groggy than me, but that's even if you're wide awake.
Well, being tired doesn't help.
Awake. But I didn't mention a big thing this week that I was under the weather. I didn't feel so good on Sunday, but after that, Monday went up north and whatever. Tuesday, decided okay, you better take a test. I had a cough, had a sneeze. Whatever. I wouldn't say I was feeling 100%, but okay. So I said, fine. So I'll take the test. I said, I'll be the first one to take it because I guarantee 100% it's not going to come out positive. And within 10 seconds, it was already like absolutely positive. So I got a formal test, which was a similar test, I guess, on Wednesday. Now the government knows that, I have officially have it now. So, got to be inside, otherwise they'll dog me. If not, give you a fine if you're not in quarantine. But one thing I'll mention, just about this, and that is that, when a person's in quarantine and you're stuck, especially as a Jew, you got an obligation to pray 3 times a day.
Yes.
So you can't go. You're stuck. You have to pray at home. Right. So, okay, learning. So, I learned, what I normally did, caught up on different things, etc. But prayer is something that, is kind of hard, to do on your own. Obviously not praying with 10 men. So technically, I was out of quarantine last night. So I went to synagogue this morning, not last night. But I remember this morning, there are only certain prayers that you're allowed to say if you have a minyan, if you have 10 Jewish meals, right? So I remember this morning, it was probably the first time in a long time that, I heard this prayer many, many times, and I'm able to answer the prayer because there were 10 men there. I mean, there were more than that. There were probably 100, 150, whatever, probably over 100 for sure, right? But you don't have that, right? When you pray by yourself, you don't have that. You have to, it's something, prayer is something that we always need to work at, right? Something that always needs to be strengthened. But when you're praying at home, it's kind of hard, right? And, in general. But I will mention one other thing because I don't want to get sidetracked here because it's going to be part 17, 18, right? But I just want to mention one thing, at the beginning of COVID where, synagogues got shut down and there were people trying to have, having services, outside, different places, whatever it was, and people took them to task because they say, listen, government shut them down. Government shut down places for you to pray. They obviously don't want you to pray, with so many people, obviously because this thing is infectious, right? Tremendously infectious. We saw what it did at the beginning, right? Of how many people died and all that. So we're not even going to go there, but there were people saying, what do these people want? I'm not going to get into the whole question about what we call dina d'malchusa dina, whether, you have an obligation to listen to what the government says, right? The secular government. You have to listen to what they say. All right, someone's going to say, but what if it goes against Torah? It's a big topic, right? It's a big topic. How much you're supposed to listen, you're obligated to listen, whatever. But this, what did they do? They shut everything down because they didn't want to see infections rise. They didn't want to see people die. Right, according to them. Now, I don't care about conspiracy theories. The government wants people to work. The government wants stores open. That's what makes money. They pay taxes. Nobody wants anyone to be home and ruin their home life, right? And ruin the fact they don't have money, and all the suicides were up at an all-time high because people couldn't, people cannot, pay their bills.
Get through.
Probably the first time in their life, they couldn't provide. What were they going to do? They're stuck at home, and all that. Now, on the flip side, I just want to make people aware, someone who's stuck at home, right? An Orthodox Jew stuck at home, and he has to pray by himself. That's not ideal. Totally not ideal. It's not recommended, right? The Rambam says one of the 24 things stops a person from repentance is separating yourself from the community. So you got to be part of the community, good things, bad things. You answer amen to prayers, different things. You're a part of things, right? We Jews are part of a lot of things. Weddings, bar mitzvahs, prayer services. 3 times a day you got to pray, right? 3 times a day you got to pray, with 10 men, right? So at the end of the day, even if you're going to tell me prayer, the Torah obligation to pray, according to the Rambam, is I can say basically what I want. That's the Torah obligation, that I have an obligation to pray. The times, the prayers, all these other things that have to do with prayer are rabbinical. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have to listen to the rabbis, right? But there's a lot of leniency. If you can't pray, right? You can't get, 10 men or whatever. There are a number of leniencies. So people would jump off the bandwagon and say, what do they want to go pray for? They're going to put people in danger. You're right, I agree. Right? You're not allowed to put people in danger. And even if you're not going to get affected negatively by COVID, right, other people could. So if you're the one carrying it and you cause someone to get sick, right, and they have all kinds of problems, and you cause them to get sick and potentially die, it's on you, technically.
The other week to me as Russian roulette.
Also, I got it very mild. I just spoke to someone, earlier. Person also got it mild, and they didn't take any vaccines. Now, I know someone else a couple weeks ago told me that they were intubated for 2 months. They were in the next world for 2 months. That's how sick they were. They were in their early 40s. They had no issues, no health issues as far as I know, and couldn't breathe. They gave more oxygen, this, that, and in the end, they intubated him for 2 months. Told me stories. He was in the next world. Now, we mentioned before, no one wants to play Russian roulette. Now, whatever you say about, about the vaccine, I had 3 of them. So you're going to say, so how could a person got it? The vaccine, it's like anything else. After a certain amount of time, maybe it wears off, whatever the case is. But Baruch Hashem, I got it mild, right? I know a bunch of people got it mild, right? So you can say, well, other people got it mild, even if they didn't take the vaccine. Could be, right? But again, no one really wants to play Russian roulette over here. But that's not even the point. The point is, what about, even if you want to tell me how lenient we can be by praying with 10 men, and I can be lenient this way, that way, the other way. So to guard someone else's life, that's why a person should get the vaccine, right? If you hold like that, because it's not for you, right? It could be, let's say, most people are going to get it. They're not going to die from it. Most people are healthy. It'd be like a bad cold like I had or other people had. So, okay, so no big deal. You'll sneeze a lot. You might not feel so good. A day or two later, you feel fine, right? You'll feel fine over here. But at the end of the day, so why are you taking the vaccine? It's not for you, per se. Because only 30% for you, 70% for someone else. So you're guarding someone else's life. That's why you do it. Now, don't you think? We've spoken a lot about hygiene. Don't you think a person should be careful? They're around other people. When they sneeze, they cough, they should cover their mouth. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. But why don't people care? I don't know. I don't have a good answer. My answer is I think people are either they've never been educated, they don't care, or they're stupid. That's the only thing I can come up with. I don't have any.
Selfish. They're selfish.
Yeah, selfish also, but I don't, it doesn't make any sense to me. But that's not even the point. People were saying, how can these people want to go to synagogue? They're going to put other people in danger, right? And look at what they're doing, right? It's a danger for them to go, right? But look at the other side. Look at the other side, how much these people want to pray with 10 men. Now you tell me, most people who pray, their minds wander. They think about other things. They don't think about prayer, what they should, when they're in the middle of prayer. Their mind's in 20 different places. Okay, so that doesn't matter. The point is that we're there to pray. We're there to do what we need to do. And when a person can't do that, and that's a part of their life, that's an essential part of their life, and they're stuck at home.
Well, Rabbi, I heard it was so bad that in New York, that when the numerous people were perishing, and the Jewish community was really, really up in arms because they, wanted to get together to bury, very, very, to remember the deceased, and
That's
that
true. There are a
was
lot of double
harder.
standards. By the Jewish community, there are a lot of double standards that went on. And that's why people are up in arms. Because a lot of double standards. For this, you're allowed to have 20, 40, 50 people. For this, you can't. Where do you draw the line? Right? But I just want to point out that when I came to synagogue, and I heard a certain prayer said, and that you can always say that prayer when you have 10 men. I got, I don't know, I felt mushy gushy. I felt something. I don't normally feel. You know why? Because when you can't do it and you don't hear it, it's a different thing. Right? It's a different thing. So you could say these people are endangering lives. What about the fact that they want to have a connection to their creator? Right? I'm not saying it's permissible to do that to endanger lives. Not saying that.
Of course
What
not.
we're saying is, what about what the person wants himself? What about what he feels when it comes to his Jewish obligation? So when I came back to synagogue, I felt I was only out for 3 days. Right? I was out Tuesday night, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Right? Friday night, and I came to synagogue Saturday. Right? Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and tonight I prayed outside. Right? Where I normally pray. Outside, and it's a different world. It's not just being you're stuck at home. I got plenty of what to do at home. I got plenty of books to learn. I'm not bored. Right? Not a question of being bored. I don't have to worry about Netflix. Oh, thank God there's Netflix. Someone said when they're in quarantine, when they're in lockdown. Oh, thank God for Netflix. But you want to have a connection to God. Forget about other people. It's also a social thing. Whatever, but you come to pray. So when you come to pray and you can't do that, you feel something's lacking. But you got to tell me, how much intention do you have anyway? Right? Maybe you only have 20, 30% intention, while you're praying. That doesn't matter. That is totally irrelevant. That's something we have to work on. But even if that's something we have to work on, when you're part of a group and you're praying for all your needs and for the needs of the Jewish people and the needs of others, that's a whole different thing. But when you can't do that, you're by yourself, you feel cut off. You feel estranged. So I definitely can understand. I understood also, way back when, I understood the mentality of why people feel, they want to be in synagogue. They want to be around others. Okay, you can't put people's lives in danger. So it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter all the leniencies, and it's all rabbinical, and all this, right? It doesn't override the fact that you can't, you have an obligation to guard other people's lives. Okay, but what about the fact what people want to do? What about the internal feelings they have? You can't just whitewash them and say, well, they don't have an obligation, and we can be lenient this way, we can be lenient the other way. Saving lives is more important. No one disagrees. No one's going to disagree with that point. But you know what? People want to have a connection to their creator. Even if their mind wanders, even if they space out, even, you fill in the blank when it comes to prayer. It's not an easy thing to do even in public. But I said, you know what the rush was today? The rush was, they take out the Torah. What did they read today? They read the 10 Commandments. Parshas Yisro. Right? That distinguishes the Jewish people from everybody else. So I thought, this will be the first time, I don't even know in how many, in how long, probably years, right? I wouldn't be able to go to synagogue on Shabbos, right? So you can say, okay, you're one of the people who likes to go to synagogue. Okay, it could be. It could be other people who don't like to go to synagogue, but they go anyway. Fine, but not to hear the Torah being read. Okay, Thursday I missed the Torah being read also, but come Shabbos, not to hear the whole Parsha, especially not to hear the 10 Commandments. As everybody stands up, gives respect. God spoke on Mount Sinai, thunder, lightning, this. If someone's asking today, what about the joy? Someone asked me today, right, as I was walking home from synagogue, what about the joy? It says later about the joy they had at Mount Sinai. Doesn't mention it. Doesn't mention it by Mount Sinai. What does Mount Sinai talk about? Talks about what do you call it? Thunder, lightning. That shofar blast that got louder, louder, louder. What was it about? Fear. That's what it was. God speaking, everybody died. God brought them back to life. Again, spoke, they all died. Right? So some say it was by 2 of the 10 commandments, all of the 10 commandments, or the fact that they said after the second commandment, they came back to life, they told Moshe Rabbeinu, guess what? You hear the 10 commandments, you hear the rest, and you tell us. We can't handle that experience. Right? So my simple answer was, even though it says later, it's all about great joy and this and that, but about Mount Sinai, what was it? Absolute fear. God wanted to institute absolute fear. Right? He wanted them to accept it through fear, and then we see by the time of Achashverosh, by the time of the book of Esther, we had to accept Torah by what? By great joy. Through great love. Because we're sort of forced into it in different ways without getting into it, but it's about fear. Right? It's about fear. But, I was just thinking, imagine, I was able to come to synagogue and, again, I didn't feel bad. So, I didn't have any, long issues, other issues or whatever, thank God for that. So going there and saying, what a great schus, what an unbelievable merit, be part of the Jewish people, go hear the 10 Commandments. Now, I don't think I was thinking that the whole time, right? But when a person, I guess you appreciate certain things when you don't have it. So when I prayed the evening service tonight, and I was outside, well, it wasn't so cold, whatever. I was thinking back, I was like, what happened to the fervor? What happened to the fervor before? You were so excited. Oh, you heard the 10 Commandments, unbelievable. So what happened afterwards? We're going to see, we're going to speak a little bit about it, that you get loud into getting back into the everyday. Doing things by rote, which we say is always akin to spiritual death. Right? Doing things by rote. So people shouldn't necessarily be harassed, right, etc., for wanting to go pray even though they can't in public. Right? In other words, when there's a shutdown, and we're worried things are going to spread like you can't imagine, so you have to be home. You can't defy what goes on, right? That's forbidden. That's forbidden to do. So therefore, but what about the fact that that's what they want to do? That's what they feel in their heart. They really want to be there, but now they can't be, right? You can't just whitewash and say, well, life's more important. We got to save life. That's true. Nobody is disagreeing with that point, right? And even if you tell me it's all rabbinical and there are leniencies here and leniencies there, and you really don't have to do it anyway in many cases. So what are you making a big deal about it? You know why you're making a big deal? Because people want to have that connection. They've had that connection for so long, doesn't matter if they're just giving a lip service, but they want to have that connection, right? They want to have that connection. I felt like $1 million walking. It's like, see the people I normally see, whatever, people gave me high fives. I heard, I was stuck in isolation, whatever. They're glad to see me. Baruch Hashem, thank God for that. But it's a desire to want to be there. Not just this is my obligation. That's a whole different thing. Could be that's my Hasidic side here coming out, saying we should sing and dance a little bit more. But that's not at the expense of life. Let's make clear. That's not the expense of life. So therefore, even if you're stuck at home, you're stuck at home. What can you do? You're under onus. You have no choice. Right? So in my case, I had no choice. I had to pray at home. Right? I had no choice. It would have been irresponsible for me to go when I tested positive. Even though most people where I'm going to go, most people are vaccinated anyway. Right? And the people who are going to get it now, most likely, are going to get it in a very weak fashion. Right? It's not going to be that strong. Okay. But still, you cannot take that chance. So, I just wanted to point that out, that, there's a desire. It's a desire for people to want to pray, and they shouldn't be knocked down and tossed around like rag dolls in a time of lockdown because they want to pray with a minion. I'm not saying they should. I'm not saying it's permissible, but you have to understand the other side. And when someone's stuck at home, it's not fun.
No.
Forget about all the other things about being stuck at home. That's not the issue. The issue is they want to have a connection. They pray 3 times a day, right? If they pray 3 times a day, now you take that away. That's your connection to God. You say, I can have a connection to God, anywhere. So now, I'm going to ask the $1 million question. We're going to get to the Mishna in a second. I'm going to ask the $1 million question. How many JITs out there? Jews in training. Tell me how great you feel praying at home by yourself, even if you know how to pray. And tell me what the difference is if you ever gone to synagogue. The difference is multiplied by infinity. It's different. People are singing. People are praying. Some with more fervor, less fervor. It's a different communal thing. And if you don't have that, you don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. But people who, are doing everything on their own because they're living in Timbuktu or they're living in the prairies and they got nowhere else to go, right? They have 0 place to go, so they're stuck doing it at home. It's not the same. It's not the same, right? That's one thing. That's one thing I just wanted to point out from, this whole thing I had to go through. So we are still, that was only 20 minutes, not too bad, right? So we are still in chapter 2, Mishna 8. It's part 14, and I promise you, between Eder without a vowel, there'll be 15 and probably part 16. But what are we speaking about? We're speaking about the more Torah, the more life, right? So we said, basically, if you're not learning Torah, you don't have life. And we're going to see how far that goes in a second, right? But what did we speak about last week? We spoke about the fear. What's the fear a person should have? The fear of forgetting Torah, right? That Rashi says in Tractate Brachot that that's what we should be afraid about. Anything else, why should I be afraid, right? Now, if a person, let's say, person did not, let's say, when it comes to COVID in general, right? So everyone's afraid. Nobody wants to get it. Nobody wants to get it. Why doesn't anyone want to get it? Again, because no one wants to play Russian roulette, right? You just don't know what's going to be. But at the end of the day, someone says, okay, I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'll take the vaccines, whatever, and if God forbid you get it, and I'm glad I got it now, right? I got a wedding to make in 6 weeks, 7 weeks. So it's good to get over it now. So fine, but at the end of the day, you put your best foot forward, but what about belief in God over here? Where's my emunah? Where's my emunah? If I had perfect emunah, as the Vilna Gaon said, perfect belief in God and faith in God, if I did that with everything, I didn't put my best foot forward for anything, not for livelihood, not for medicine, then why would I take the vaccine? Why would I bother taking the vaccine? You know why? Because if I believe God's going to take care of all my needs, and everything I do, the Vilna Gaon, Rav Elijah Vilna says, then you can rely on God for that. But if you ever went to a doctor, if you ever went to put your best foot forward, can't do that. You have to go to a doctor, right? You have to get medicine. If you're sick, you have to get medicine, right? But so we're not allowed to be afraid of anything except one thing, says Rashi. Rashi says, what are you allowed to be afraid of? I might forget my Torah. I might forget Torah. So I'm going to tell everyone a fundamental principle. Whoever learns Torah, you might not remember. But I said this, Rabbi said that. We're going to get the ultimate test after 120 years. God's going to come and say, okay, let's see what you learned. Tractate Brachot, go. And you're going to spit back all these pages and chapters and whatever. But what if you don't remember? What if you didn't do proper review, don't remember a whole lot? Right? Thank God your soul remembers. Your soul is going to record it. Just like we're recording right now, 100% your soul's going to record. So even if you're worried about forgetting in this world, next world, your soul should be okay. Right? Your soul should be okay. It should spit back information, etc. Then you get judged how much you learned, how much effort you put in, in different things. So we spoke last week about the idea of forgetting Torah. Right? The fact that that's what we're allowed to be afraid of. Everything else we're not allowed to be afraid of. Okay, I have to take precautions, right? So you're staying up all night in a bad area, and this and that, 6'7" white guy. Okay, you got to take precautions, right? Hopefully you got a billy club or who knows what, right? But you got to take precautions, right? We can't, you can't go against Coffman's 617th commandment, and that is don't be a moron, right? You got to put your best foot forward. That's not saying, oh, you don't have faith. What do you mean? Of course I have faith. I don't want to get mugged. I don't want to this, right? You got to put your best foot forward. But I'm allowed to be afraid I may forget what I learned. That's why we have to always constantly review. Now, this is not something necessarily, this worry is not necessarily something bad. Why? It's going to enhance our lives. It's going to help us strive to review. It's going to help us strive to learn more, to be the best people we can be, to reach our full potential. So when we're learning Torah properly, and we want to ascertain the truth of what we're learning, and we're going to get to the nitty gritty. We're going to go through all the details and go back and forth. Does it mean this? It means that? What are the repercussions? What are the ramifications? What's it going to help us do? It's going to help us understand God's world. It's going to help us understand what we're doing here and what he wants from us. Now, since the Ramchal in Mesilas Yesharim and Path of the Just, he says, what's our purpose in the world? He says, we're here to struggle. We're here to work hard. We're here to reach potential. Does anyone know what their potential is? No. Nobody knows what their potential is, right? I had an 18, 19-year-old kid tell me, Rabbi, come on, you don't have to give me mussar, no ethics. I'm holding better 95% of world Jewry. Right? Told the story before. My answer was, how do you know God doesn't think that? Maybe God thinks, well, so what if it's true? But what about if you have greater potential? And if you have greater potential, then you're in trouble. Doesn't matter if you're holding better 95% of world Jewry. The purpose is, what are we doing? Here to work. That's what our purpose is. We're here to work hard. We're here to overcome bad character traits. We're here to understand God's world. And you know what? I think it's a lot easier to understand God's world, to understand what our purpose is, than to do it. We can read all the books. We can read Jewish history. We can, go through Jewish philosophy, take my class on duties of the heart, right? Going through the gate of self-accounting. We can go through all kinds of things and understand what to do. That's not the same as doing it, right? But I would say 97% of what we have to do in this world is to understand what we're doing here. Understanding most people, what's the biggest question they're going to ask? Do I put ketchup or mustard on my hot dog? Last week, the biggest question was wild card weekend, football. This week, divisional playoffs. Next week,
I know, and your Patriots got whomped by Buffalo last weekend.
So they got whomped. That's the way it goes, right? So next week, it'll be the game before the Super Bowl. That's what everyone's concentrating on. And what should we be saying? As we say in Boston, who the heck cares? Okay, they win, they lose, they get crushed. Okay, that's life. Listen, but no one's going to go on a streak like they did for 20 years. Nobody. Never going to happen. Never going to happen again.
Well, not Tom Brady, wherever he is. Yeah.
Exactly. So, whatever. Not going to happen. So, but that's the way of the world. So, if I know what I'm supposed to do, then why can't I go out and do it? Oh, because we have an evil inclination. Right? And we get all excited about all these other things that are a distraction, right? 100%, they are a distraction. So we have to understand what God wants. We have to understand his world. And then we have to go out and do what he says. Now, obviously, that's a lot easier said than done, right? And the reason is because there's always this mind to heart disconnect. Understanding what to do is not the same, right? It's not the same, as actually going out and doing it, right? That's the bottom line. And if it be that easy, as we mentioned many times before, everyone would be signing up, right? We'll take it from Abraham, right? Abraham came on the scene. Everyone had their own pocket God. Here's Bob. Don't leave home without him. And he came to the world through design, right? That had to be a designer, so you have to worship the designer, and all that. And what happened to him? All kinds of tests, right? That's what life is. It's all about tests. Now, we're going to get into a little more tricky thing here. We talked about the idea of being afraid only if I forget my Torah, right? Right? That's what we mentioned. Now, That being the case, comes on the Gemara. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah 16b tells us the following. Tells us that truly evil people are going to be written and sealed in the book of death on Rosh Hashanah. The truly righteous will be written and sealed in the book of life. Everybody else is in the middle, what we call Beinonim, the ones in the middle. So their fate is going to be sealed on Yom Kippur. They have up until Yom Kippur, right? So the righteous, what happens to them? They get sealed in the book of life straight away. The evil ones get sealed in the book of death on Rosh Hashanah. Come along the earlier commentaries, got a major question, right? What's the major question? The major question is, why do we see evil people not only have it easy, but they live long lives? You see, evil people can live long, prosperous lives. They don't seem to suffer that much. Doesn't mean they have it easier in everything, right? But it seems like they, nothing bad happens to them in general. And it seems like they live long lives, some more, some less, etc. So how can it be if the Gemara is telling me that evil people are written and sealed in the book of death? That means they're dead. That means they're going to die. But we see that they live. They may live the year, next year, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, right? You see, nothing happens. So what's the story? So the reality is that people who constantly sin, they don't care about Torah, they're apathetic. What does it mean they're apathetic? It's like someone, it's like trying to start a Humvee with a 9-volt. Never going to happen. Right? They're totally apathetic. They don't care. Torah's true. It's not true. Eat, drink, and merry, lest tomorrow I die. That's what they're thinking, because they don't care about anything else. Right? Since they don't care about anything else, and that's how they want to live their lives. So, what about the fact that they're still alive?
Walking Dead.
That's exactly it. The reality is, people are constantly sin. They don't care. They're apathetic. They don't care about Torah and mitzvahs. They are already considered to be dead. They're just the walking dead. They're like zombies, right? In other words, they're just lacking burial. It doesn't matter, again, people say, oh, come on, you really believe that's true? You really this, you really that? Yeah, there's a lot of proof. You want to hear about it? No. I don't care if it's true. I don't care if God spoke about Sinai or not. I'm going to do what I want to do, okay? That doesn't mean what we say isn't true, right? Which we mentioned many times. But people like this is a major problem. This is a major problem, right? Because you see, they live long lives. So I had this question many years ago. Someone who comes to synagogue, most Jews, if they come to synagogue, when do they come to synagogue? They come to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Probably the worst 2 days of the year or 3 days of the year to come to synagogue. It's all about doom and gloom. Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment, right? It's all about who by fire, who by water, who's here, who's going to be rich, who's going to be poor. All these things, all about judgment. I don't care what prayer book it is. It's all about judgment, right? All about judgment. Yom Kippur is all about feeling like a piece of dirt, right? Beating your chest for all these things, all these terrible things, that you've done throughout the year, right? Tremendous things. So I had somebody once tell me, in a lot of synagogues, you need a ticket in order to get in, right? They have to pay a certain amount to get in to get into services. But someone once tells me, when I went to services, the more money you pay, the closer you get to the air conditioner. So I said, I got a great idea. I said, why don't you take a portable and bound down to it? They're like, ha, ha, ha. That's very cynical. I said, you just told me the more I pay, the closer I get to the AC. So you're not there to pray, you're there for air conditioning. So why don't you just pray to an air conditioner? Now, my question was, you hear something like that. That person holding absolutely nowhere, and I'm going to judge them. You go, oh, how do you have a right to judge? Someone who says something like that, where are they holding spiritually? I don't care what they know, what they don't know. Where are they holding spiritually when they say something like that? It's ketchup and mustard on my hot dog. That's where they're holding. They're not holding anywhere. So my question was, if someone, who the most important question is, so I put ketchup and mustard on my hot dog, what does God give them? Because we know that on Rosh Hashanah, God's going to make a decree. He's going to say, this is how much money you're going to make. And it's going to be sealed on Yom Kippur. Now, even if a person technically made more money, you're going to lose it other ways. You're going to lose it. You're going to have to go to the dentist. You got a problem with your car. You got a problem with, I don't know, you fill in the blank. Whatever it is. So the losses that you took during the year, plus what you made, and that's how much you were supposed to get. No one gets more than what's allotted to them. Right? Unless there's a decree, they're allowed to have more. Whatever the case is. Now, that being said, somebody like this comes to synagogue twice a year, 3 times a year. What's God going to give them? So I heard a great rabbi once say, right, asked a similar question and said, you know what they get? God gives them more of what they already have. In other words, he keeps them in that same direction. By keeping them in that same direction, what happens? They go further and further into a spiritual abyss. It's like they're in quicksand. They just keep falling and falling. Now, somebody like that, could they ever repent? Is it possible? That was my question. If you give them more of it, and they have more of what they're doing now, more money, more pleasure, more this. So if that is really the case, how can anyone ever repent? How are they ever going to come back to Judaism? Now, the answer is everyone has that spark. Everyone has that spark inside them, that spiritual spark. They could come back. They have the ability to come back. There are people who've gone way off the rails in Torah and mitzvahs, and came back. Right? People totally, if anyone's ever heard the story of Nissim Blank, and how he became a convert, he should be dead, according to himself. The way he grew up in a drug den, he should be dead. Shouldn't be alive. Right? No question. But got an amazing story. An amazing story. So Jews, unless their soul is totally cut off, right? God forbid they ate leavened products on Passover on purpose. Right? They did things to be spiritually cut off. If that would be the case, then, okay, there's no hope for them. Because now they're spiritually cut off. So you're going to say, but this is obviously the case. As my Rebbe would say, if you see somebody who's cut off spiritually, which means either they die young or their kids die young in their lifetime or both, why do you see what spiritually cut off means? Means you normally die before 60. That would be the case. Now, you see people live till 70. As King David said, you get 70 years if you have strength, 80 years, right? Let's say you see people live to their 90s. They live a long life, but they were already spiritually cut off before. So what happened? Why didn't they die? The Rebbe says, how do they live their lives? They live their lives like animals. If they live their lives like animals, they die like animals. But they're already spiritually cut off. That means they're already dead and buried. They're just lacking burial over here. They're going to say, what? People can have great careers and this and that. How do you see that they're already buried and they're already dead? Look how they live their lives. Look how they live their lives.
Yes.
They eat and drink like everybody else, spiritually holding nowhere in the world. Nowhere. They spit in God's face on a daily basis. They have no connection. So if they have no connection to spirituality, they're dead. So is it possible, right? We'll throw out the question. Is it possible somebody who's that spiritually dead?
Oh, yeah.
Is
I'm
it
working
possible?
with the Walking Dead right now, Rabbi. It's it's amazing to see. I mean, yeah, we've been dealing with a drug crisis here in British Columbia, and I'm dealing with, we have to we try to save life in the sense of give them safe injection sites and things like that. And the idea is they're going to do it, and the ones that perish are those that do it in privacy. And so if they're monitored and you've got the right naloxone injections, you can pull them out of an opioid overdose. And but just to see the way the mind of just going down that path over and over and over with a hard heart.
Listen, there are people get involved in all kinds of things. It could be drugs. It could be gambling. It could be bad business ethics. It could be a million different things, right? So if a Jew goes on that spiral, and he keeps going down, down, down. So you tell me the odds are pretty small that they're ever going to return to Judaism, have any connection to Judaism. Right now, I would say, let's say you have people, we're living right now, probably in the richest generation in the history of man, right? So that being the case, you don't really ever see, it's very rare where you see somebody who has money is a big rabbinic scholar. They don't normally go hand in hand, right? So I could say by a convert to Judaism, I could say by a Baal Tshuva, by a returnee to Judaism. Someone who didn't grow up religious becomes religious, right? Most people are not coming from wealth. They're not coming from wealth. Because I would always say, someone who's got money, why would they convert? Right? Why would they want to convert to be an Orthodox Jew? Someone who's Jewish and has a lot of money. And they have a lot of money, why would they want to be an Orthodox Jew? Why would they want to take on all these laws? And even if they're obligated. They're obligated in all these laws. But why would they change their lives to do that? Most of them. Why would they do it? So you can count it on one hand. If that. How many Orthodox Jews, came from, the secular world, who had a ton of money. I know of one. Could be there are others, right? I know of one. So, okay, but that's, so what's the reason? Because the more money you have, we've spoken about that, right? The more money, the more worry. How are you going to keep it? But if you have more money, you have plenty of money, why do you think you need God? That's a crutch, right? Isn't that a crutch? You need God. You have money. What do I need money for?
Yeah.
No, what do I need God for?
Yeah. How many people want things that are distractions, eh?
Everybody wants distraction. That's what they want. They want to be left alone. They want to do, whatever they were doing, when they were younger and this and that. They just want more of it. Maybe some people will settle down. Maybe that'll be the case. They won't be doing the exact same things, and this and that. They may come on to do good things, but it has nothing to do with Torah. Nothing to do with Torah. Someone I went to camp with, was he talking almost 40 years ago, right? So I told him, I became religious. I'm doing this. Like, oh, you're just continuing your religious studies. No, it's not just a continuation of religious studies. Because I believe it's the right thing to do. And I changed my life accordingly, based on that. So you got plenty of people, the vast majority, when it comes to money, they don't have anything to do with Torah. Jews and non-Jews, right? You're not going to see a majority of converts. I haven't seen it in the last 13 years. You don't see converts coming into Judaism having a lot of money. They don't, right? They're not in that type of position, right? And if they were, and they had a lot of money, why would they convert? What do I need it for? So the point is, there are a lot of people, and I grew up around adults as a kid, and there are a lot of people out there that are very shallow, very, very shallow. Now there are some people, interested, more intellectual, this and that. I met a lot of very shallow people, upper middle class, extremely shallow. Basic questions they would ask: ketchup and mustard on my hot dog. It's all about enjoyment in this world. That's all it is. That's all it is. And if God would open up their eyes and he would show himself to them, they're not going to change. They wouldn't be interested in change. Why not? Because we mentioned the Brisker of says you have to be a vessel to want to change. If you're not a vessel to want to change, God can reveal himself 100%. You're not going to change. You're not going to change. Right? So we see over here, as Gemara tells us, that there are a lot of evil people that seem to have an easy life, right? They don't seem to struggle too much. They have it easy. in this and that. But really, when you look at their lives,
Yeah, no
there's
depth.
depth. There's no depth, right? You see it in Hollywood. You see it in sports. Someone once told me many years ago, this is a little bit extreme, right? But they said, when it came to the Academy Awards, they would sit their kids down and like dress them up as like movie stars watching this, right? So every Purim, that's when I, 1 year, a couple years ago, on Purim, it was right at the same time as the Academy Awards. So anytime when I got up to speak on Purim, I would stand up and say, okay, I'd just like to thank the Academy for bringing me here. Like, obviously, not too many people going to understand, but whoever got it, got it. They're like, who's this Academy? I was like, come on, it's the Academy Awards, right? Anyway, I digress here. But these people say, wow, look at the glamour. Look what they have. And look at the money in the houses. And they're all empty, all of them. Most of them married 2, 3, 5 times, who knows what. Change their spouse like they change their shirts, right? And these are not lives that we're looking to, we want to be just like them.
TV today.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what they say, what they do. I could bring out countless examples, and that's not even the point. I don't even want to digress, right? But, we know these are lives not to be embellished. These are lives that we're not looking to say, wow, such great people and this and that. That's forbidden anyway. For a Jew, certainly, to say, TB12, look how great he is and this and that. I'm not allowed to give him any praise, right? I can't praise what he does. There's a whole discussion why, right, in general. But what about what goes on behind the scenes? You're going to say, I don't care. I just want to see him throw a football. I just want him to see him kick a ball, shoot a basketball, whatever it is, right? But these people, what do they have in their lives? Just because they can throw a ball or they can shoot a basket. What do these people have in their lives? They're lacking burial. That's all it is. And these people are very easy. I don't care the best of them. The best of them. I could sit here and pick apart. I would have a field day. It'd be very easy to pick apart all the things they do wrong, as Jews or as non-Jews, right? Very, very easy. You go against this, you go against, oh no, but I'm a good person, right? I'm good in my heart. Oh, so why cheat on your taxes? That's a Torah prohibition according to the Noahide laws. Now that's different. Uncle Sam, he's getting 33%. That's not stealing. He's stealing from me. Or what about euthanasia? What do you mean? My great uncle, he should have died a long time ago. He's sitting there drooling, doesn't know anybody, just going to put him out of his misery, put him out of our misery. Well, why isn't that murder? No, that's different. That's what do you call it? That's mercy. My Rebbe brought down this week's parsha. I'll tell you an interesting thing. One of the 10 commandments is, guess what? Is no murder. You're not allowed to murder. This will apply to Jews, apply to non-Jews, right? Many different ways. So one of the things he says by a Jew, see, you're lucky you're a non-Jew over here. 6'7" white guy is a non-Jew. Imagine if you had the opportunity to learn Torah and you wasted time. You were wasting time when you could have learned, let's say. Right? You're wasting time. So you're wasting time, you could have acquired spiritual world you can't imagine. But what did you do? You were sitting there watching football or whatever the case is, whatever a person was doing, right? We'll make it easy. It was something forbidden. They were wasting time when they could have been learning, right? Now, if that's the case, says Moed Rebbe, you know what that's akin to? Murder. Murder. Right? Why is it murder? Why would you think it's murder over here? Right? Let me see if I can find exactly what he said over here. Right? But why would it be considered murder? Right? Because you're wasting time. Time is life. Right? Certainly time is life. Right? If time is life and not time is money, right? That's a whole different thing. Right? That's a whole different thing. Yeah, 1 second. Let me just see if I find it here. He said, you shall not murder. Why does it not say you shall not shed blood? Why does it say lo tirzach, you're not allowed to murder? Because someone who touches the goy says, what's a goy says? That's a dying person. It's considered a murder, right? It means he's already going to die in a couple seconds, but you hasten that death, right? That's murder, right? Doesn't matter, right? Even if it's only by several moments, right? So one of the commentaries says, someone who wastes his friend's time, or even his friend's time, or even his own time, he's preventing the friend or himself from learning Torah. It's considered like he shed blood. Why is it like he shed blood? Because the main purpose of our existence in the world is what? Is to delve into Torah, not to Tom Brady statistics. Right? It's about delving into Torah. Because if a person steals someone's time and you deprive him of a life of Torah that split seconds, you're deemed a kind of temporary murder for the duration of that deprivation. Let's think about that. What's our main purpose in the world? Main purpose of the world is delve into Torah. You're wasting someone's time when he could have been learning his life. You just murdered him. In a certain sense, right? In a similar way, what did the Rabbi Chaim of blessed memory say? People say time is money. I say time's a chunk of life. Time is life. So therefore, what does the Torah tell me? The Torah tells me you're not allowed to murder. Instead of saying you're not allowed to shed blood. Why? To include all kinds of murder. Not just specifically what we think is murder. You're depriving a person of his life force. What's the life force? That's your soul connecting to God. That's your soul connecting to that life force. What keeps us alive is Torah. If that's what keeps us alive, and you're wasting time when you could have been learning, or you waste someone else's time, right? That's murder. That is considered murder. Right? So Rabbi Schneider, my Rebbe's Rebbe, right, said the following. Right? We'll just finish up this whole thing over here. And that is that he said that the Gemara says Avodah Zarah 10b, that Rebbe cried and said, there are those who acquire the world to come in an hour. That was the famous story of Rabbi Elazar ben Dordaya. Rabbi Elazar ben Dordaya, biggest scum of the earth, was that, he was all around the world, everywhere, finding another prostitute to be with. He crosses the 7 seas, finds this one prostitute, and something happened. He didn't do what he was going to do, and he cried out, he wanted to repent. Right? He went to the stars, the moon, they didn't have an answer. Went to the mountains, they didn't have an answer. He said, it all depends on me. And he cried in repentance, and he died. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar ben Dordai is welcome in the next world. 2 seconds before he's scum of the earth, worst person ever created. Right? All of a sudden he repents, puts his head between his knees, he totally repents. Not only does he have a portion of the world to come, but he's called Rabbi. Rabbi Elazar ben Dordaya. Right? So said Rebbe cried. Right? Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, who organized the Mishna, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince said, there are those who acquire the world to come in an hour. And someone takes their whole lifetime. So what was he crying about? So Rebbe here says in the name of Moshe Schneider, of blessed memory, the severity of wasting even a minute. Wasting even a minute. If 1 hour is so important, you can acquire eternal afterlife. Through it, someone will waste even a minute. How much more so many hours is likely to be severely punished for it. So that means, what are you doing? The time that a person wastes, doesn't matter how much time, you're giving up a portion of the world to come, and it's as if you're murdering yourself. You waste someone else's time, when you could have been learning, you just murdered him also. You're going to say, come on, doesn't murder have a specific definition? No. The reason is because the Torah could have said, why, it's forbidden to shed blood. Right? So Rebbe goes this whole thing, that time a person can even murder themselves. Right? But back to what we're speaking about before. Right? When it comes to somebody who's half alive, not even, and they're wasting time, right? They're wasting time being connected to this world. So when they're wasting time being connected to this world, that's all they do. That's all they do. So what happens? They're evil. They're already dead. They should already be buried. But we don't see that. We don't see that they're buried. We see that they're alive. We see they're doing well. We see that they're healthy. They're making plenty of money, etc. But the reality is, how are they living their lives? They're living their lives whatever they want to do. That has nothing to do with Torah. That goes against exactly what the Torah says. Right? 100%. Right? That is why, by us, by ultra-Orthodox Jews, that's why learning Torah is the most important thing than anything else. You got to put food on the table, right? That's also true. But when you're not working, there's an obligation to learn, right? We've spoken about that. In the modern Orthodox world, Torah is also important. Torah is also important. But if you were to ask most modern Orthodox fathers, what would you rather have for your son? Would you rather your son, be illuminate Torah to the masses, be a great rabbi, or be a doctor, accountant, or a lawyer? The answer is the vast majority. I'm not saying everybody, but the vast majority, what would they say? Doctor, lawyer. Nothing to talk about. Why? Because their mind's already corrupt. Why is their mind already corrupt? From business, from university. They'll say, you have to have a university degree. Now, people are going to say, I don't need a university degree today. If I want to study interior design, do I need a degree for that? No. If I want to study, computer graphics, I want to outdo Dan the man and CG. Do I need a degree? I don't need a degree. All I have to do is know a few things, make the Energizer Bunny go all over the screen, right? Obviously, oversimplification, right? Do I need a degree? I don't need a degree, right? One of the biggest lies, I think one of the three biggest lies in the history of man. One of them is Christianity, right? I think one of them is Christianity. The second is there's the Palestinian people. The third is you need a degree in order to make money. Certain things you do need a degree. I'm not going to say not. The vast majority, you don't need a degree. You don't need a degree, right? But the point is, they'll say, hey, yeah, you have to be more well-rounded. Who says? And if I could speak about Gregorian chant, because I took a music appreciation class at an Ivy League school, what does that mean? Zero. What does that mean? I can talk a little bit about art, Picasso, Andy Warhol, different things. I should take my can of vegetable soup, make a huge thing, and I'll call it pop art. What does that mean? What does that mean? Doesn't mean anything. I have no value in life. I'm not saying people can't paint. You want to be an artist, whatever. What's the most important thing in the world? The most important thing in the world is Torah. Someone will say, no, you got to do the army first. You got to be in the Israeli army. No, Torah is more important. You need a standing army. No one disagrees. There's nothing more important than learning Torah. Therefore, in our community, what's the biggest praise a person can get, a guy can get, is how much he knows and how much he's learned. That's the most important thing. Care about degrees? Who cares about degrees? Right? So in the modern Orthodox world, again, not according to all of them, right? But a lot of them say, of course, this is crucial. You got to be more well-rounded. What does that have to do with Torah? Torah, I have to be more well-rounded. And we're going to see there are great people that knew about mathematics, and they knew about science without studying it. So how'd they know about it? You know where they knew about it? They knew about it through Torah. Torah opened their minds to other things. That's how they knew it. Now, do we need doctors? Yeah. Do we need lawyers? Yeah. Do we need accountants? Yeah. Right? But again, even if someone's doing any of these fields, they still have to learn. There's still an obligation to learn. Right? But we can see all kinds of people have no connection to Torah. And as we said before, they're not alive. Now, that's a little bit of a fanatical thing to say. Right? But the question is, how do they live their lives? If our obligations, the Ramchal said, in Path of the Just, our obligation is what? Our obligation is draw close to God and to work hard. That's what we're supposed to do. God gave us a book. right? It's called the Bible. He gave us a book. He gave us instructions. He gave us instructions what to do. Passed it down through Moses. Gave it over to us. Good thing, right? It's not a free-for-all, right? We have instructions. We have to listen to the rabbis. All these things. All these things. That's what we're doing here. We're here to struggle. We're here to work hard. We're here to overcome our evil inclination. That's what we're here for. We're not here. It's not about football, right? People can say, I disagree. Fine. It's not about football. It's not what life is. That's not what it is. It's a distraction. Many, many things are a distraction. So, is it possible for a person to get out of the distraction? Yeah. But you see, it's an addiction like anything else. And therefore, if it's part of our psyche, it's very hard to fight against. Very, very hard to fight against. So the vast majority of people are going to say, wow, this is fanaticism 101. The vast majority of people in the world today, they have no connection to religion whatsoever. Obviously, the proper religion, they're lost. They are dead. They're just lacking burial. Right now, for someone to come back from that, very, very hard. I'm not going to say impossible. It's very hard. Very, very hard. Now, someone will look at me and they'll say, come on, how did you do it? Because I was interested in truth. And I grew up with money. Family had money. Right? But I wanted to learn more for whatever reason. But it was something deep inside. Most people I grew up with, they think I'm nuts. They still think I'm nuts. They're not, people I've known 30 years, not so much in contact, they're going to think, wow, your daughter's getting married at 19, another daughter got married at 18, whatever. Yeah, come to my house when everybody's there. You need earplugs. All right, there's no question. You need earplugs, right? But now they're going to be 16 people that came out of me. Just my family.
Mazel tov, yeah.
Right? So next week, we had to push it off a week because I had to be in quarantine. But next week, I have two grandsons that are turning one. They turned one last week. So we're going to have a whole big party. We're going to have a whole big party for them. And I think someone's making a smash cake. Anyone knows what a smash cake is? You put, you put babies in front of them. They're all obviously covered with bibs and all that. And they just dig in the cake. They just dig into the cake. Now, who's going to be there? So my whole family will be there. My newest potential son-in-law will be there. Right? And what do you call it? One of my son-in-law's parents and their extended family, right? Brothers, sisters, cousins, probably about 30, 40 people. Probably going to be in my house. And thank God I got a big enough living room. So, okay, that's only, my family, and some of the other families that are related through marriage. Right? That are related through marriage. Now, you see something like that. Again, it's good to wear earplugs. Got to be pretty noisy, right? But it's all like one big family. When you see something like that, none of my friends will ever have that. None of my secular friends will ever have that. No, they won't even have anything close. They'll say you don't have to have so many kids, you don't have to do this. Come see something like this. Come see when Torah works. Unbelievably, go see what it is. You see what it is, right? You have to revel in it. You have to enjoy. Forget about all the technicalities and what your house is going to look like and all the noise and everything else, right? Someone said to me a while ago, they said, wow, you got kids coming in left and right, grandkids. I said, yeah, so what? So what? That's the beauty. That's the absolute beauty of it. It's a tremendous thing. There's no question. What I'm going to say, what, you can only come at certain times? Don't come when I'm giving classes. That's better. True. That might be true. Might hear some noise in the background, right? Sometimes. But in general, isn't that what we really should be living for? Isn't that really when Torah works, it works unbelievably? When it fails, also fails unbelievably, right? But something like that, we should revel in it. You're going to say, oh, but that's fanaticism. Anyone who's ever seen it, doesn't matter how secular a person is, they're going to see the absolute beauty. They're going to see the beauty, unless your heart is just hard as a rock and you refuse to see it. You refuse to want to believe in it. A person comes for a Shabbos meal, and there are words of Torah, and there's good food, and this and that. But you see, people are interactive, this, that. It's a different world. What else do people talk about? You're going to talk about Biden's numbers that are going down like a hot potato? And that America is, more than 3 trillion in debt and going further. And what a big buffoon he is. What are you going to talk about? Entertainment? What are you going to talk about? Sports? All these things don't matter. They're just background noise. That's all it is. We have to live in this world. But you know what? God gave us an opportunity. He gave us a golden opportunity. I'll tell a story. The Rabbi Chaim we mentioned before. The head of the yeshiva in Radin, Rabbi Chaim was sick. And when he was sick, students in the yeshiva dedicated time of their learning so that Rav Naftali Trop could get better. So they came to the Rabbi Chaim. They said, how much time would Rebbe give that Rabbi Naftali Trop should get better? So he thought about it. He goes, okay. He says, I'm going to dedicate 1 minute. So the students were shocked. It's like, Rebbe, could you explain that? What do you mean 1 minute? People dedicating hours. Some people more, some people less. You're only going to give 1 minute? How can you give 1 minute? Why only 1 minute? What did the Chofetz Chaim say? What did he want to show? He wanted to show, you know what the power of 1 minute is? You know what the merit of 1 minute is? The Chofetz Chaim once said, we get a mitzvah for learning Torah, right? When a person's learning and you're reading over what you're learning. So he said, you could say 200 words in a minute, right? Even faster than me. Some people say no one speaks faster than you. I don't think that's true, right? But, you could say 200 words a minute. 200 words a minute, right? Let's say, or 200 mitzvahs. Now, let's say you do that in an hour. That's 1,200. That's 1,200 mitzvahs in 1 hour. Think about over 8 hours. 96,000. If you learned 8 hours and you were doing this. Think about over, a week. Right? You get let's say you have 96,000 a day. Right? Multiply by that by 7. It's 2 million something. Right? Right? Over a week. That's 8 million, 9 million a month. Multiply it by a year. Look at all those mitzvahs. You're going to say, big deal, what's 1 minute? 1 minute is a lifetime. 1 minute, we can't imagine the power of what that is and how that affects us. Even with all the stupidity out in the world, pushes away a lot of darkness because I got the power. I got the power to learn, right? I got the power to receive, hopefully receive that light, millions of beams of light. So how come you're not one of the righteous of the generation? You want to know why? Because we're lazy. Essentially, we're lazy. Right? We don't want the responsibility. We want to relax. We want to chill. We want to do other things. Right? But what's the most important thing when I'm not working? The most important thing is that we need to be learning. Right? And if a person doesn't, says Ramosha Schneider, a blessed memory, you just committed a death penalty. You're dead now. You just murdered yourself.
Wow.
By checking out that football score. You murdered yourself. Not to mention any other person you're going to waste their time. Right? You murdered them also. So you're going to say, come on, Rabbi, how far does this go? How much do I have to be aware? You have to be a heck of a lot of aware over here. Because if I was God, and thank God I'm not, right? I think the world would be happy I'm not. Put on my George Burns glasses, my funny mustache, and I'm going to say, okay, so what'd you do? Let's see what you did over your life. You learned Torah, that's very good. Where was your mind? Where were you when you prayed? Where were you when you were at the Super Bowl? When you were doing this and doing that? Don't you know I created the world? Of course I know that. But I was busy doing other things. Now that's if you're already holding somewhere in the world. Imagine someone's not holding anywhere in the world. Isn't that going to be a shock? Isn't that going to be a shocker, Rooney? You guys say, but you never taught me. You never did. What? You know worse than Abraham. Abraham figured it out by world of design. The human body. Look at the human body. Look at the miracles of the human body. And what goes on. Right? There's a tiny microbe in the world that is causing all kinds of chaos. Now, I just read something earlier. This new variant, this Omicron, whatever you call it, this new variant is now going to be it's now a subsidiary variant of something else. There's something else that's like another I don't know, whatever it is. of this. So if someone gets that, now they're claiming this thing is so weak. So even if you get it, it's not the same thing as the delta, so you're not going to get affected as much. But now they have something to now split it in half or split it in quarters, right? So even if you get it, it should be even less. People say, when is this going to end? I don't know if it's ever going to end. You're going to have variant after variant. Might be weaker, whatever the case is, it could be going on for years, right? We're stuck with this stupid thing. I can tell you one thing we learned from it. One thing we learned from it is not even about the value of life. One thing we learned from it beyond the shadow of a doubt is that science looked very stupid. The world of medicine looked so idiotic, they didn't know what they're doing. And today they don't know what they're doing, right? This great government here in Israel, what they do when this new variant came, they shut they shut everything down, right? Meaning they shut the airport down. So no one could come in. But they realized, okay, we got so many people vaccinated, what are we going to do? We can't do that. So now they reopened it. It's insanity. They don't know what they're doing. The whole world doesn't know what they're doing. All these people getting affected. Tens of thousands. Here in Israel, like 30,000 in a day. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. They said last week, I think it was last week or the week before, there were 200,000 people in isolation. So when you hear something like that in Israel, that's like 10% of the population. That means multiply it by 3 times. That's probably like more than like almost 1 million people in isolation right now. Again, the people getting sick, they're not getting seriously sick. There are some that are fine, right? But look at 1 million people in isolation or more. 30, for a small country, 30,000 in one day, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. So eventually everyone's going to get it at some point. It's going to be like the flu. Everyone's going to get it, some better, some worse, whatever it is, right? But when you look at that, they can't stop it. And we saw all these other pandemics. It wasn't really a pandemic, right? We saw the SARS and all that. At one point, it totally disappeared. For no reason, it disappeared. You know why it disappeared? According to Torah, because God made it disappear. That's the only reason. There's no rhyme or reason why it shouldn't have disappeared and it should have split into all kinds of variants. Like this. Why didn't it do it? Nobody has an answer. Science doesn't have an answer, right? We know the answer because God wanted it done. He wanted it stopped. Why? There were all kinds of terrorist attacks a number of years ago, being attacked on buses, and it stopped. Essentially, it stopped. You know why it stopped? It wasn't because of the IDF. It wasn't because of the Israel Defense Force. It wasn't because of all their checks and this and that. You know why it stopped? Because God wanted to stop. That's the only reason. Because if they wanted to, I'm not going to say the Arabs are the brightest people in the world, but if they wanted to, they could wreak havoc in this country. I hope no Arabs are listening. They could wreak havoc. Easily wreak havoc. Easily, in so many ways. But you know why it's not happening? Because God's not allowing it to happen. When he wants us to get scared out of our wits, so he'll put these things in front of us. There was somebody once said, it was funny, it was a former, someone who lived in America, lives here now. And they said, okay, these Arabs were going on buses attacking people, stabbing people, whatever. He goes, so they said, I got my Louisville Slugger. I got my baseball bat. I'm ready. I'm like, you idiot. I spoke about it once on my YouTube channel. I said, if you're getting stabbed and you're not prepared, your Louisville Slugger is not going to help anybody. It's not going to help anything. Some people are walking around with rolling pins. Some people with other things. It's crazy. You don't know what to do. Because these people could come on at any time. You're not in control. You're totally not in control. But what does God want you to see? Through this whole pandemic, he's showing you, this just didn't happen in Israel. This didn't happen in China. This didn't happen in Thailand and all these other places. All over the world. And the whole world's crazy. How long did England shut down for? How long did, Australia? Crazy. What's going on in the world? And then you had people, that weren't Israeli citizens or whatever, they want to come back and the whole airport shut down. And everything gets shut down. It's absolutely crazy. Right? It's absolutely nuts over here. So in the end, what do we have to see? We have to see God runs the world. God is the one in charge. Right? And science looks pretty darn silly. That's what we learned from it. Because science doesn't have answers. Now, everybody knows, You don't need me to say this, but everybody knows there's no question, there's no question that one little thing, one little microbe that the body doesn't need or shouldn't have can wreak havoc on the body.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Person gets a cold.
Salmonella, yeah.
Salmonella, your thyroid is off, can cause myriads and myriads of problems. Right? So I always say a person shouldn't have to wait till they're sick to appreciate how the body works. Right. You take somebody, we're not going to get gross. I won't get gross there. Take somebody who's constipated. Right? If they're constipated, they haven't gone number 2 for like 2 days, 3 days. They feel awful. They just want to get this stuff out of their system. Right? They'll take Metamucil. They'll take other things. Right? And they're in a tremendous amount of pain. Right? So, okay. So if someone is regular, they go to the bathroom regularly, very good. Right? You don't have any issues. Right? But when a person gets blocked up, when, again, we're not going to get gross here, right? But when that happens, you feel awful. You just want to get you feel like you're bloated. You just want to get this stuff out of your system, right? 100%, you want to get it out of your system, and then finally, when it happens, and a person starts to feel better. Okay, so why is it? Why is it that we have to wait until that point? Right? We only realize what we have, unfortunately, when we don't have it. And we take a lot of things for granted. Many, many things for granted. So in the secular world, they take everything for granted. When this doesn't go right, that doesn't go right, fix it. We live in a very quick fix generation. Light bulb goes out, fix it. You got to deal with it. This, whatever, okay? The light went out. Not the end of the world. We have other light. We're not going to die if there's light. If I don't run to the store to get a light bulb, it'll get taken care of. Right? Not the end of the world. There are some people out there, that's what happens. That's exactly what happens. One little thing throws everything off. But see, Jews are ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. We are believers, the son of believers. So therefore, we have to take stock. We have to take stock what we do. We have to, anything that happens, we have to think. We have to be better. We have to try harder. We don't want to be considered like people who are dead. In the secular world, most people are dead. They'll say, this is important to me, right? I enjoy doing this. So what? What is our purpose in life? Our purpose in life is either I'm going towards God, right? I'm going towards God, or I'm going against God, right? I'm going in either direction, right? Could be in the right way. Could be, God forbid, in the wrong way, right? But if I'm going in the wrong way, and I'm not going in the right way, guess what? That's a problem, right? That's an absolute problem. And the reality is, I have to be thankful for everything that I have, right? So I was telling someone today, I was telling someone earlier that, I was stuck at home. So I was stuck at home since Wednesday or since Tuesday night. And Wednesday here was very cold, right? Just about below freezing, which is cold for Israel. And there was a tremendous amount of rain. And there was snow. There was potential snow, right? So I said, well, if I had to get sick and I had to be in isolation, well, it's not a bad day to do it. It's a horrible day for weather. I mean, it was good that we're getting rain, a lot of rain and there's wind and, the potential for snow, so you got to look at the, good side, a little bit. I was glad I wasn't outside. I was glad I didn't have to run to synagogue, in freezing weather, when it was pouring like you can't imagine, and the threat of snow. Because if there's a threat of snow in Israel, even a quarter of a centimeter, they shut down the whole country, right? Wow. No buses, no nothing. So on Wednesdays we're running, right? But, you got to plan accordingly. Otherwise, very easy to get stuck. But on the one hand, okay, I'm stuck in isolation. I'm stuck at home. can't go anywhere, right? But even though I can't go anywhere, I miss the bad weather, right? That was a benefit in a certain way, in the way, when it's raining like you can't imagine. So we're getting rain that we need, so that's tremendous, right? But a person can look at everything as being bad and every little thing, and how do I deal with this, right? I mentioned while you were out,
pessimistic.
Light bulb, a light bulb goes off, goes out. Got to fix it, got to do it. You're right, I'll get to it. It's not like I don't have any light in my living room. Okay, I'll go to the store. When I get to the store, I'll get it, right? I'm not going to run out now to get it because I don't need it. But there's some people, any little thing throws them off, right? So when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, in our lives,
OCD,
we have no control of anything. We have no control of just about anything. So if that's the case, we got to take things in stride.
Hashem rules.
That's it. So I needed this today. I didn't get it. I need it tomorrow. Well, I hope I get it. Whatever. But God's the one in charge, right? He's the one in charge. So, it is kind of disconcerting in a certain way that a person will see, as we mentioned before, you'll see these evil people, they spit in God's face on a regular basis. They live long lives. They do all kinds of things. And you're the one going through the grind. You're the one having difficulty. Right? So having difficulty can say, why do I have it so hard? Why don't they have it so hard? So what's the answer? They're already dead. God's going to take care of them. We have, we believe 100%, God's going to take care of them. Whether he takes care of them now or later, doesn't matter. God is the ultimate judge.
He will do it justice.
God is going to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have to worry why this person has it easy and I don't, right? We mentioned before, right, that the Korban Aron, who comments on who the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, of blessed memory, brings down in Leviticus chapter 16, verse 1, and he says that why did Nadav and Avihu die? For even a relatively small sin, which I'm going to be part 4 tomorrow, speaking about it. So why did they die for something relatively minor for other people? You know why? Because when you're closer to the king, you have more responsibility, right? And we read as well, we are light into nations, God's chosen people, and we don't do the right thing, we get smashed. And we've seen that over and over and over. If God hated us, don't you think it would be worse? It would be worse, but we have greater responsibility. So why would God keep someone alive till they're 90, 95? They spit in God's face, on a daily basis, right? One reason could be because he's going to wipe them out in the next world. They're going to die like a dog, in my language. Poof! Nothing happens. They're going to die, right? They're not going to have a portion of the world to come. They're going to use up, imagine it's like having a lot of extra lives playing a video game. They're going to use up all their extra lives that God gave them for the 1 or 2 mitzvahs that they did in this world. Because God has to repay them. So God will repay them in this world, but in the next world they don't get anything. They don't get anything. So therefore, why am I going to be jealous? Why am I going to say, look at their lives, look at this, look at that. They have it so easy. What do I care they have it so easy? The biggest question they're asking, I put ketchup or mustard on my hot dog. That's what I'm jealous of. I learned something that I cracked my head, trying to figure out what it means and this and that. Finally came to a conclusion, came up with the right answer, the right understanding. I'm whistling Dixie over here because I use my brain. I'm thinking, I'm trying to get the most out of God's Torah over here. And I'm worrying about whether Tom Brady's going to win another football game. What does that have to do with anything? Rabbi, it's a great distraction. You're right. There are a lot of things that are good distractions. A lot of fun. Right? I can't even make fun of the CFL. It's over. Right? There's a lot of good distractions. A lot of good distractions. Right? But people who are into distractions, they're just going to fill more of it and more of it. Right? You're going to say, well, it doesn't have to be a balance. There is no balance over here. Right? Someone asked me the other day. Someone says, well, how can it be true that someone can be a Noahide and hold by JC? You can't. You can't. That's idolatry. Right? Everyone agrees. Right? That that's idolatry. And if it's idolatry, you cannot believe in idolatry and hold by the Noahide laws. It doesn't go. Right? 100% doesn't go. You cannot straddle both worlds. If you straddle the secular world with the Torah world, it doesn't go. It doesn't go. How many doctors, lawyers, etc., steeped in the secular world became rabbinic scholars? Handful. It's either you're in one world or you're in the other. That's it. Doesn't mean you don't have to make a living. But even if you're in that world, you get out as quick as you got in. You don't get distracted. And when you're not doing what you need to do for a living, for parnasa, then you're learning. That's what you should be doing. You got to have time for family. Okay, you have to find a balance. But if you have 2.5 feet in the secular world, a quarter foot in the Jewish world, in the Orthodox world, you never amount to anything. You'll never amount to anything. And that's the main reason I left the modern Orthodox world. Because I was terrified of learning, a couple pages here, a couple pages there. Even if I would have passed all my exams for rabbinic ordination, big deal. What does that mean? I was afraid I would never amount to anything, right? And I was being groomed to be something big in the ultra-Orthodox world, right? I could be like somebody on the cover of magazines, do podcasts and all kinds of things, brings a missionary, comes speak in a synagogue, and he invites Dr. Ruth. He brings a sex therapist, right? Now, even if you're going to tell me he can bring a sex therapist, she survived Auschwitz, and she's only going to tell her story about Auschwitz, she's not going to talk anything about being a sex therapist. Why glorify that? Why aren't you glorify that? You're going to say, we're not looking at the other stuff. We're not going to let her talk about the other stuff. But isn't that who she is? How do you differentiate from who the person is? Right? I wouldn't let her talk about Tiddlywink. I wouldn't let her talk about Tiddlywink, Tom Brady, or anything else. Right? Why would I care? She represents something that we don't talk about. We don't talk about it. You go to a therapist, it's one thing. Bring her to a synagogue, glorify who she is. Come on. No, we weren't glorifying that. We're glorifying she survived Auschwitz. How do you differentiate that? Right? So, again, is everybody like this in the modern Orthodox community? No. No, I'm not going to say that. Right? But at the same time, you got people that person's the head of rabbinical courts, person does conversions, and he brings missionaries to speak in the synagogue. So someone else had him on a podcast and bother him. He's erudite, he speaks well, he's this, he's that, he's got his own bass in, blah, blah, blah. So I said, no, what about bringing Dr. Ruth? He goes, you have to ask him that. I don't have to ask him that. I don't have to ask him that? Because he wouldn't be on my podcast. I wouldn't glorify him and have him on my podcast. You're having him on your podcast. You're saying he's legit. He says, no, you have to ask him. No, I don't have to ask him. You don't bring a sex therapist. I don't care what she's talking about in the Orthodox synagogue. Period. But we're not going to harp on that. The point is, you see this person gets all kind of honor. So well known and blah, blah, blah. Say whatever you want about me. It doesn't matter. Is that real Torah? Is that real Torah? No, it's not. So we live in an upside down world. Right? That's what the Gemara in Pesachim says. It's an upside down world. One of the rabbis went upstairs to ask him, what does that mean? And he went upstairs in the next world. He says the people who are suffering, having difficulty in this world, they're the ones smelling like a rose upstairs. The ones who are doing good and popular and this and that, even amongst quote unquote rabbis, they're going to be smelling so well. That's an upside down world. Right? Now, my personal pet peeve on this, which, most people know, is I can't stand people that lie. And I can't stand people that misrepresent. I don't care how popular they are. I don't care how much money they make. I don't care how much Torah they know. They can know a heck of a lot more Torah than I do. That's fine. Right? But when you cut corners and you lie and you misrepresent, okay. So I'm not going to take what they say. Yeah, I'm not going to take what they say seriously, and no one else should either. Right? But that's evil. That's evil. God will take care of them. I have no doubt. I don't care how big their smile is. I don't care whatever they give over, how popular they are, whatever podcast they're on. They're frauds. They're frauds, right? And no one should ever listen to anything they say. Anything, right? You throw the whole thing out, right? Because it's based, someone who can do such a thing, I should take them seriously. Show them what they say. So the point over here is that we mentioned before, people constantly say don't care about Torah. They're not alive. They are considered, as Ramosha Snyder said, they're considered dead, right, in this world. Now, comes on the Baal HaTurim. Baal HaTurim is the son of the Rosh, and he's got a commentary. He's got a commentary on the Torah. And he says that Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 6, says that it takes 2 witnesses to kill a person. Now, what happens? What happens if you only have 1 witness? Then technically you can't kill them, right? If they saw someone kill, whatever they did, right? But you need 2 witnesses. Torah says I need 2 witnesses. So let's say in front of a rabbinical court, right? A person, 2 people arguing in a rabbinical court, let's say about money, and one person says he owes money, and he's only got 1 witness. Now, 2 witnesses, they need. How can they get the other person to pay? So the only way they can get the person to pay is they have to make the other person swear. They have to make what they call a shavua. He has to swear. He has to make an oath. Now, the problem is we don't allow people to make oaths today. Why don't we allow people to make oaths today? We don't allow them to make oaths because we're afraid they're going to lie. We're afraid they're going to lie. Now, they'll make a compromise, but technically they can't get this person 100% because they only have 1 witness. So now, comes on the Baal HaTurim. Baal HaTurim says it takes 2 witnesses to kill a person. But we see that someone who's only truly alive is going to be put to death. So the Gemara tells me, Tractate Brachot 18b, that evil people, when they're alive, we mention they're considered dead. Why? Because they're disconnected from the Torah, which is the source of our lives, right? The source of everything we do. That's what it is. Why? Because the Torah tells me, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 4, Deuteronomy tells me that you have to be attached to the Lord your God. You are all alive today. Now, someone who is technically dead, does that mean they wouldn't get killed? No, they'd also get killed, right? We're not saying they don't get killed over here, right? But the problem is, you can tell me maybe it's only an alive person. Someone who's really attached to Torah and mitzvahs, well, how can he do something that's liable for a death penalty? Okay, everyone's got an evil inclination. Person, has this desire, to smoke cigarettes on Shabbos. So they warn him. 2 people warn him. And then they listen, if you smoke this cigarette, you're over a Torah prohibition of kindling a flame. Right, of lighting a fire. And if the person says, Pirkei, doesn't matter, I'm going to do it anyway, get 2 witnesses, give them the warning of exactly what they should die for, what they transgress, so then they'll die. Then he says, I don't care, and he does it. They take him to the Sanhedrin, they kill him. Right? But you're going to say that person's dead? He's not dead. Right? He just has a desire to smoke. He doesn't want to give up smoking. Right? Even on Shabbos. Right? So even though we're going to say it's only about a person who's holding my Torah mitzvahs, but what about heretics? Heretics aren't holding my Torah mitzvahs. They'd also be liable. In many different things. So we said before, even if they're dead spiritually, doesn't mean they're not going to get judged over here. God is going to take care of them, right? That there's no question, right? But at the same time, our obligation is not to disconnect from Torah, because the Torah tells me you have to attach to the Lord your God. Because if you attach yourself to the Lord your God, says the Torah in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 4, you are alive today. Now, simple explanation. Karaites will be happy over here. No oral law. What does that mean? If you don't do that, if you're not attached to the Lord your God, you're dead. That's what it means. You have to attach yourself over here. Otherwise, there's a fear you're going to be dead. Right now, comes on the Rambam. And the Rambam says, in the laws of killing, the Rambam says, the students, let's say someone, God forbid, kills by accident. What happens if they kill by accident? If they kill by accident, they have to go to a city of refuge. Now, if they kill someone by accident, a student who does such a thing because they're not careful, they have to go to a city of refuge. And who goes with him? His Rebbe. His Rebbe goes there with him. Why? Because what do we say over here? Because the Torah says, you shall live. Right? When the Torah speaks about that, it says, you shall live. What does that mean? It means you shall live receiving wisdom. Meaning learning Torah. But without Torah, another proof that he is considered dead. You're going to tell me his rabbi didn't do anything. He didn't do anything to deserve to go into exile over here. Why does he have to go to a city of refuge? Right? So the halacha is, he doesn't have to live there. He can go to the city, come back and forth. Right? But he can't leave the student there without learning. If he's not attached to Torah, what do we hold? He's dead. So therefore, simple explanation is anyone who's not attached to Torah, and there are different levels. There are different levels what that means. But if you're not attached to Torah in general, what do we say? You're dead. That's what it means. You are considered dead. Now, it gets even better. Comes Rabbeinu Yonah of Garandi. Rabbeinu Yonah of Garandi brings down in Shari Tshuva, in the gates of repentance, in the third gate, in letter 15, he says like this: people who perform mitzvahs, and they do them by rote. They don't organize their thoughts to think about fear of heaven. They don't organize their thoughts for anything. They just go by and do the mitzvahs. And they're doing it by rote, which is akin to spiritual death. What does it say? King David says in Psalms chapter 73, verse 26, they don't think about fear of heaven. On them it says, there are those that are far away, those that will be lost. What does that mean? They're going to be lost. The world to be lost over here, the word over here, to be lost, right, means they are going to be cut off spiritually. They're going to lose their portion of the world to come. As it says in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 30, I will destroy the soul among its people. Spiritual death is doing things by rote. I'm not saying you're spiritually cut off. We're not saying you ate leavened products on Passover on purpose. We're not talking about that. We're talking about someone who performs mitzvahs by rote. I prayed today. I prayed yesterday. I'll pray tomorrow.
Go through the
motions. I'll do this mitzvah. You're doing things without thinking. You're going to say, but, how much thought do I need? Why do I always have to psych myself up? Because you want to make sure you're not spiritually dead. Right? Again, more of my Hasidic side here coming out. We should sing and dance a little bit more. Right? Meaning, Torah is everything. If Torah is everything, then I have to be lit like fire. We all have to be the Energizer Bunny. That's our obligation. Right? That's what we have to do.
If the plug has to be in the socket in order to get the electricity.
That's right. But I'm saying there are a lot of people that even if, they went to learn today, it's not the same as they did yesterday or as the day before. They're sort of just going through the motions. Why are they going through the motions? They're going through the motions because they're not internalizing the message. And they're doing it for whatever reason. And then you have a phenomenon where later in life, person can be religious their whole lives or become religious and be religious for years and years and then just give it all up. Why do they give it all up? You'll say they get burnt out, right? You'll say this happened, something else happened. But why after so many years? And what's the simple answer? Because they didn't internalize the message. They didn't internalize the message, right? We can take it with people came out of Egypt and they complain, hey, we want fish. We missed the fish in Auschwitz. What do you mean you missed the fish in Auschwitz? You have somebody like Korach, goes against Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron. And he's the one who came out of Egypt. He's the one that held the ark. Not everyone held the ark survived. He's in a high spiritual. No, but I want to be the king. He didn't want to be the king. If he would have wanted to be the king, like Moshe Rabbeinu, they would have killed him. Right? He wanted to be the high priest. Why can't I be the high priest? Because we see the Mishna we're going to talk about in the next millennium, that honor, desire, jealousy takes a person out of this world, could be literally. Some of the commentators say. But Korach was no dummy. He understood. So how can he make such a mistake? How can he make such a mistake? It says where Moshe finds in a blessed memory, Parshas Korach, he didn't internalize the message. He didn't get the message. Now you're going to say, if he didn't get the message, what does it say about us? Right? That's not the question. But if you see someone so great, saw miracle after miracle, you got to put the miracle inside of yourself, right? You can't just rely on what happened yesterday or the day before or anything else, right? The Torah that we say every day before we say the Shema, that God is Mechadesh B'chol Yom Tamid. God renews creation every day, right? Meaning, what's the language? Mechadesh, the language is present. Present, it's active. Why didn't it say God does it in the past and he's going to do it in the future? Because he does it every day. Because if he didn't continue to do that every day, we go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, right? The original chaos, the back of that Led Zeppelin album. You know what I'm talking about, right? So you go back to that, but that's bad. You know why it's bad? Because you wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have to listen to me, even better, right? No one would have to listen over here, right? We don't want to go back to that. No one's interested in going back to that. So what happened? You can have the greatest people that, jealousy killed them. Other things killed them, right? They didn't get the message. How'd they not get the message? They saw God on Mount Sinai. They didn't get the message. They got the message, right? They didn't have proper emunah at some level. They didn't have proper belief and faith. But you're going to say 3,000 years later or 2,500 years later, what's it going to be say about us that we're living in the cream puff generation? Right? We're living in a very weak generation. So what? Doesn't matter what generation we're living, right? We got an obligation to be close to God no matter what. So therefore, what does the Torah tell me? The Torah tells me anyone does anything by rotes without thinking very much into their actions. What does King David say? They're going to be destroyed from this world. Right? They're going to be destroyed and they're going to get spiritually cut off. What about all the mitzvahs you did? Right? The person's going to say, so why bother? Let me just be ignorant. Let me have my fun. I won't have a portion of the world to come. But a person won't be happy that way either. Right? There was a great rabbi once who one of his students went off. They had a conversation with him for like 2 hours. And, the student wasn't able to convince him. He wasn't able to convince the student. So other students asked him, says, Rabbi, why are you wasting your time? This person's like a rock. Why in the world are you wasting your time? So it wasn't a waste of time. You know why it wasn't a waste of time? Because this person's so steeped in desire. He's so steeped in garbage and needs a snorkel in order to breathe. Right? So now, the enjoyment he's going to have in life and all his desires not going to be the same. You know why? Because I beat it out of him. I gave it to him so much, he's not going to get the enjoyment anymore. He's going to feel guilty for what he does. Right? That hopefully is going to bring him back. So I don't think it was a waste of time. Right? But we got to be afraid ourselves because I could tell you with everything a person goes through in life and all the difficulty, a person can say, you know what, what's it all worth anyway? Why should I even bother? It's too hard. It's too hard to stay in the right path. I want to enjoy a little bit of football. What's the big deal? Why are you going to tell me if I do things by road, it's over? You want what? Scare tactics? Maybe we could use other scare tactics. No. A person has to understand what their obligation is in life. And that's what we spoke about before. Right? A Jew or a non-Jew, their goal is, I have to be close to God. Non-Jews don't have the same obligation. Right? They don't have the same obligations. That's true. And I would say there are many things, as we mentioned many times, that are a spiritual imperative, right? Or let's say better, they're a moral imperative. By non-Jews doesn't mean, they're going to find out forever, if they do it. But at the same time, if you want to really be close to God, everyone's got a golden opportunity to learn whatever they want to, to learn whatever they need to learn. So if that's a golden opportunity, how can you do things by road? How can you give in to these other things? They're going to take you on a bad path. Because it's enjoyable. Again, if I take 2 steps backwards, I need to take 2 steps forward in order to get to 0. The more you give in to all these things, I don't care how enjoyable it is, how much fun it is, it takes you away from what God wants. And it's very, very hard to jumpstart a Humvee with a 9-volt. Because that's where most people are holding. Right? 100%, that's where most people are holding. Right? So if that's the case, If that's the case, then that's what they got to do. You cannot give in one iota. That's why we say by the ultra-Orthodox, it's learning Torah or nothing. That's why we say it's all or nothing. Because you cannot straddle both worlds. Both worlds don't work over here. They're two diametrically opposed. They're diametrically opposed. I have to be in the secular world. That's what I do. Fine. But you cannot let things affect you. Right? People speak Lashon Hara, I got to put it out of my mind. People curse, I got to put it out of my mind. I have to think in Torah. I have to work around certain things. But we cannot be spiritually brain dead in the sense I'm only doing things by rote. Because if I can speak about this till tomorrow, which won't happen, right? Because you got another class coming up and you'll fall asleep anyway in the middle, right? But the whole point is that we do things by rote. That's what we do. We're not in tune. We're not thinking about what I should be doing. Yeah. We're not. We just, when a person prays, they got to think about what they're doing. Right? At the very least, doesn't God know I'm praying? Yeah, that's the minimal level. There was a great rabbi, right? I think it was Rav David from Karlin, right? That would say that he had a stender, he had a lectern in front of him. And on it was written, Shvisi Hashem Unegdi Tami. That God is always in front of me at all times. One of his students once asked him, it's one of the Torah giants of the generation. They said, Rabbi, what are you doing? Why would you put this on your stender? Why would you put it on your lectern? He says, you know why? Because when I learn Torah, I get so much enjoyment. I want to remember it's God's Torah. I want to remember it's not like I'm learning mathematics, right? It's not like I'm learning, English lit. I'm not learning something else, right? It's not just, spiritual mumbo jumbo. It's not just intellectual stimulation. It's about what do we say before, like the Rabbi Chaim said, Torah is life. It's all about life, not about these extraneous things, right, that don't matter. But we can't get caught up, as we mentioned, as Rabbeinu Yonah says in Shari Tshuva, in the gates of repentance, we cannot get caught up in doing things by rote, because as King David says, you're going to be far away and be lost. What about all the Torah that they learned? They don't get credit. They'll get some level of credit, but guess what? By doing it by rote, they're not thinking of God, right? They're not thinking of God. There are people, I've heard other great people say this, there are people could be religious their whole lives, make tens of thousands, millions of blessings on a daily basis. And they say, blessed are you, God, King of the universe. But they don't think about God at all. They don't think about God at all. They say, yeah, I pray. That's something I have an obligation to do. But my obligation is to learn Torah. Shas, Poiskim, Gemara, commentary. You're right. Don't I have an obligation to pray to God 3 times a day? More my Hasidic side here coming out. You have an obligation to say, I do pray. No one says I don't pray. But Torah is the most important thing. But you're speaking in front of the King of Kings. He can change your life overnight. From bad to worse to good, he can change anything in one split second. But a person can mention God's name 100 times, 1,000 times, not have intention. What do you mean I don't have intention? I mentioned God's name, right? But when you say it, you don't have intention. So you're doing things by rote, you're not thinking. You're totally not thinking. That's akin to spiritual death. That's what King David says. He says you will be lost. He's not telling you it might happen. There's a possibility. You'll be one of the 20% it doesn't happen to. No. He's saying you will be lost. You will be spiritually cut off. And that's what it says in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 30. I will destroy the soul amongst my people. So if a person is doing that on a regular basis, they will be spiritually cut off. What about all the Torah that they learned? Forget about it. It's gone. It's gone. It's not going to help you. Right? And God's going to say, you learned right. That's it. It's not even spoiled. This food could have been good. Could have been good, but you ate it like a pig. That is what it's like. It's like Uncle Esav. When, it's brought down that when Yaakov feeds him, and he makes him swear, and he says, I'm starving. Fine, I'll give you my birthright. Just feed me. It's like he took a shovel and he shoveled it in like an absolute pig. Right now, I've seen people eat. A lot of people eat. I'm not even going to go into detail. Right, like they never had the last. It's like the last meal they've had is like in 2 months ago. Like they're totally starving. Right, but in the end, that's what I'll compare it to. Someone who's spiritually dead. They don't think about what they do. Look how they eat. Look how they act. Look how they do other things. Right? It goes hand in hand. It absolutely goes hand in hand. Because if a person doesn't think about what they do, they'll cause other people damage. They won't care. They won't, hygiene won't be so important to them. They'll cough all over you because they don't know any better, or they're just stupid. I don't know. Whatever it is, they're not thinking about what they're doing. Oh, but when you see they pray, they pray with unbelievable fervor, and that's great. That's great. But what about other things? Because most things we do are between man and God. Are between man and man. They're between man and man. And even things we do, that are between man and God. We don't think, we do, we act, and God forbid we shall be spiritually cut off. God forbid. Right? So we have to work on that on a daily basis. We have to think about what I'm doing before I make a blessing, before I pray, before I learn. What am I doing? I'm not learning like I'm learning mathematics. I'm learning because it's God's Torah. I'm saying this blessing, because not only do I have an obligation, but I'm acknowledging God is the king of the world. He's the one that's in charge. But you're going to say, but don't I already know that? But I say thousands of blessings. Think a split second before you shovel it in your face. Right? Think a split second when you do it. Right? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? What is my purpose? Someone will say, come on, Rabbi, how many people do that? And my answer is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. What people do, I don't care what people do. Question is, what are you supposed to do? What's our obligation? So you're going to say, don't we know better? We should. We should know better. But a person does not ever want to get in the habit of forgetting what we're doing. Ever. Yeah, you have a question.
Yeah, Rabbi, how heavy of this weight should be on Noahides? I mean, I realize a lot of what you're saying pertains to everybody, of course, but how heavy of a weight is this for Noahides? I mean, is this something
a non-Jew, listen, they have to know their purpose. They have to know, what they're obligated in. They have to know that, they should, even if it's not necessarily forbidden, all these moral imperatives, controlling thoughts, working on character traits, these different things. Also, whatever they do and whenever they learn, they should understand I also have an obligation in Torah. You're right. It's not necessarily as intense as it is for Jews. But I would ask the $1 million question, why would a Noahide get caught up in all this other garbage also? Even if it's permissible, right? Football, right? Even if it's permissible. You always have to ask yourself the question, is this a benefit to me? Does this make me closer to God? Does it take me away? You're going to say, there's nothing wrong with football. Right. There's nothing wrong with entertainment as long as it's clean. Or other things. Or I'll pick apart the good things from the bad. Even if I would agree. Even if I 100% would agree. You now have to ask yourself the question, am I better off spiritually or not? Now, someone will tell me, and no, I doesn't have to go that far. But I would say, if you're living in this world, what are you living for? What is a non-Jew living for? You want to have fun? Okay, I don't have to be Jewish. I'm not going to be thrown, I'm not going to be thrown in the kitchen sink if I had bad thoughts, I did other things. Doesn't apply to me. I can do what I want. You're right. A lot of the things may not apply. Right? But I'm going to ask the $1 million question again. Does it make me a better non-Jew in God's eyes? Doesn't matter if you don't have to do it. Doesn't matter what the rest of the world does. Where am I holding spiritually in the world? Does this benefit me or not? And I guarantee I could be here till tomorrow, which again, you fall asleep and you got another show in a little bit, right? But I could be here till tomorrow going through step by step of a number of different things that'll make people I'll put them in tears. I'll put them in tears of where we could be holding in the world. And we're not, right? And even if these things don't apply, to non-Jews. Don't they want to be closer to God? Don't they want to go in the right direction? But life is fun. Let me enjoy. So some people, okay, let them enjoy, right? But I guarantee, if they listen to news talk radio, if they listen to sports talk radio, there are a million things they hear that's going to be forbidden for them to hear. It's going to be forbidden, even for non-Jews. Right? So why would I subject myself to that as a non-Jew? There are a lot of things. A lot of things. Again, we're not saying it's not enjoyable. We're not saying it's not fun. We're not saying they have the same obligation as Jews. But again, my question would be, so what are you living for? So you're no different than other non-Jews. You just happen to keep these laws. Okay? You speak like them. You act like them. What differentiates? So for a Jew, we got a lot more obligations. Right? There's a lot more things that we have to do. We have to control and all that. Non-Jews don't necessarily have that. But I would say, as a moral imperative, wouldn't that make you a better person? Wouldn't that make you closer to God in different ways? Doesn't matter if you have an obligation to do it or not. But if a person goes, down a different path, even if they keep, some of the laws, or all of the laws, they could get away with it technically. But if they have a higher awareness of different things, they're going to be different people. They're going to control how they speak. They're going to control how they think. They're going to work on controlling how they act. They're going to be looked at as totally different people than if they keep doing the same things everyone else does. Right?
So
I think
there's an accountability by that awareness.
Yeah. For a Jew, for sure, there's accountability. Right? For a non-Jew, again, even if we would say they're not obligated in a lot of these things. So they don't necessarily have an accountability in such things. But why would I say they have let's say a moral imperative? Because it makes them better people. How they act, how they interact with others, right? How they they don't curse. They try and control their thoughts. They work on other aspects, of their lives, etc. That makes them better people. Now, you're going to say, am I obligated? No. Who's going to say you're obligated? I said it's a moral imperative. But I guarantee, just this last thing.
So if you're not improving, you're going backwards.
That's it. Right. If a person even works on themselves 10 minutes a day of not cursing, that's already something. That's already something. Doesn't matter what the rest of the world does.
Stagnation.
Right. But if not, you're going on a slippery slope that is not going to be positive. Right. I didn't meet too many people. I met too many people who became better people because they listened to sports talk radio. I haven't met people like that. They got their own opinions, they'll disagree, lashon hara. Again, I could be here till tomorrow discussing all the negative things, just listening to the news, in general, or following different things, right? Even if it doesn't apply, it does not make you a better person, right? So I guess next week, part 15, right, is going to be, we'll take the next part of the Mishna, the more understanding, the more counsel, the more understanding. So we'll start from that, I guess, next week. But this idea of doing things by rote is a huge topic. It's a huge, huge topic. I covered it in like a half an hour, right? But it's a huge, huge topic, right, of something that we want to be very careful we don't fall into that trap.
Oh, Rabbi, the word rote was not one that I had in my vocabulary before ever reviewing this lesson a number of years back, and just understanding the concept of how it's that lazy, haphazard approach to anything. It's definitely not being the best you can be in any scenario if you're doing things by rote. And I found myself, I spent a lot of years in sales, and I got to the point where I could have a better than average day by rote selling the product. You just get into the repetition of knowing the ins and outs, and you roll with it. But then I also found myself slipping into a little bit of guile, and caught myself inevitably. It's like, when I heard the word rote, which was not in my vocabulary, I said, that's where I was going wrong in a lot of respects. And there is repercussion for when you just move by rote, and let your actions be decisive and positive, and put your choices to work in this world, folks, and you can make it a better place. And I think that's a lot of what the Torah is teaching us. And it's not just about us; it's about us making the world a better place. And you can't go wrong doing that. So, Rabbi Coffman, I want to thank you for being such a champ today, going forward with this class with a ton of energy. Even though you've been diagnosed with COVID, and we just hope that you have a full refuah shalema, and that you're fully healthy and can mingle there without any inhibitions or blockades. And we're thankful for all the classes you share. So we're on for part 15 next week.
We are on next week, part 15. Tomorrow, hopefully, be back on Talk. Be back on Noahide Nations, going through Noahide laws. My class on Book of Leviticus, also 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. So, yeah, full schedule. Back to a normal full schedule.
Awesome. Well, we hope your strength stays with you, and you're blessed in all that you do. So, folks, we're going to sign out for today. But please do come back next week for more Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. I so appreciate him. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, everybody. Bye for now.
No problem. You working every Friday night?